Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the HTBox AllReady Community Stand-Up. AllReady is a project that helps organizations that prepare in disaster relief or disaster preparedness coordinate volunteers. And this is our kind of our bi-weekly jam, and we have just a few things to touch on today, and we'll probably get started. Just shout out to one of our community members. I'm going to pull up our GitHub repo here. We just had a pull request come in in the last week here from Tony Ho, who ported our web jobs to Azure Functions. And so I've got that branch pulled down locally, and I'm trying that out. So that's a huge help for us, and we are going to be moving away from web jobs and towards Azure Functions. So we've got some deployment stuff started for that, and we really appreciate it. And when the community steps in, it sure makes things a lot easier for us. So thanks, Tony, for that one. And also a huge shout out to the folks who participated in the Stockholm Codeathon last weekend. We saw quite a few pull requests come in a very short period of time. We had a couple of really active contributors in that period, and they knocked out some issues for us, got our build running a little bit more smoothly, added some tooling for developers, fixed a couple of issues, did some refactoring, added some unit tests. There was a lot of really good activity, and so we're super geeked about that, and we send out a ton of thanks for all that work that you did. We have another not exactly a codeathon, but some test activities coming up. Tony, did you want to touch on that quickly?
My microphone came off of mute. Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. It did now. Yeah, you're live.
Congrats. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of things going on, which we definitely want to say we're a big thanks for. We've got the Star West Conference, which today is October 3rd, if my make-believe watch on my wrist is correct. And so the evening of today, and the 4th and 5th, there will be a testing lab at the Star West Testing and QA Conference. And so we've done this before, and what's great is we set up an instance of the application. We have a set of scenarios and a set of use cases, if you will, and they run through the application. And this is an example of how we get contributions, not just from people who write code, although that's great, as well as people who do UX, but also people can help test the application. Use it like a user would, find bugs, find issues, make suggestions, find places where we need to fix it. And so we've got one of those that's going to be going on today and for the next couple of days at Star West. And then later in the month on October 17th, and then the 18th and 19th, there is Star Canada. So the testing conference moves up north, and they are going to be doing the same. So a big thank you to the folks who are organizing those conferences and working with us at HTBox, as well as all the folks that'll jump in and help actually test the applications and make them better, faster, and stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to get an idea of the impact that that AllReady can have, the scenarios that these folks are testing are centered around things like overland flooding, about being prepared in the event of a major earthquake on the West Coast. So these are like real life scenarios that when disaster strikes, like the problem is a lot worse if you're not prepared. And so there are organizations out there that need to coordinate massive numbers of volunteers in order to prepare a community for when you have a community that's vulnerable to a particular type of natural disaster. It takes a lot of manpower and woman power to make that happen, to get people prepared. And so this is something now that is going to be tested from an organization standpoint, from a volunteer standpoint, and that couldn't happen without help from groups like Star West and Star Canada. Okay, so Tony, you and I were working on some build stuff yesterday. I'm not sure if it's something that would help other folks out there in the .NET Core Azure space, but the problem that we were running into was related to file path. Do you want to touch on that really quickly as well?
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen happen a few times, and I think I'll get this all right off the top of my head, is that because we have the web jobs, which, as you mentioned a moment ago, we're moving off of, but what happens is those still get compiled with straight up .NET 4.6, not using core or anything like that. And what happens is we've seen, and I don't know that we finally traced it out, but different times, I'm not sure what the configuration or if it's the phases of the moon or such, but at different times when it builds out those projects, it puts the output, the DLLs, all that stuff, either right in the bin, debug, etc. directory for the project, or it actually puts it underneath that with a Win7-x86. And we haven't quite figured out the pattern of when it happens, but we were doing the deploy to support the testing lab, and it started again where it wasn't putting it in, quote unquote, the directory we expected, the proper directory. And so we did some hacks to deploy that. So I'd love to know what the pattern is. I realize that we are moving away from web jobs, but as a technologist, I don't like not knowing why something's happening in what I hope is a deterministic universe. So
for sure, and
that's the issue we've run into, and we got it fixed, but don't quite understand exactly what's happening there.
Yeah, so the scenario is, as Tony said, we have a 4.6 project that's part of our solution. We compile each of the projects separately because we are targeting different frameworks, and that's just how things have worked best for us in the past. We have a custom Kudu script for deployment to Azure, which takes care of the compilation process and copying the files over to the proper place so that web jobs function. And the problem in this scenario is that that directory sometimes exists and sometimes exists under a different name. So I'm not sure, like you said, phases of the moon, direction of the wind, who knows? But we are seeing a different path being generated by the build tooling in Azure. So I'm not sure if we can collect any useful data there or not, Tony, but maybe we should forward that to someone on the Azure side of things. But okay. So that's from that side. Steve, you'd said you had a couple of issues that you're working this week as well.
Yeah, so just been sort of slowly ticking through some of the outstanding stuff. One of the ones I'm looking at is the ability to add information to requests. So we're looking at having kind of a basic non-threaded notes system on request to add updated information, perhaps as a specific set of information that a volunteer needs to know when they're attending a particular request about that location or how to find it or something that they need to do specifically to access it. So we're looking at adding that in. So I've got
is that something just as simple as come in through the garage door or something like that?
Yeah, it could be something like that. Yeah. So we've got a DB table now. This is not sort of submitted via pull request, but there's a DB table now that will track those sort of notes. And I'm working on the UI and various actions and handlers to wire that all up now. The other thing that working on sort of alongside that in a separate branch is we're looking at having the ability. So we've got this concept now of sort of team leads for itineraries, and we haven't actually got a way for a team lead that's logged in to easily access all of the itineraries they're managing. So we've got an issue 2071 around adding in a lister page for them when they log in from the admin menu. They'll be able to select and view any itineraries they're managing. So that piece is nearly ready to go in as well. And then the final one I was sort of about to look at, and then I had a question, was around adding individual events into one day. So I think you commented on this one and said about potentially adding tags to requests, which seemed like a good solution. So we can tag a request with a given date or possibly any other sort of specific information we want to include against that, so we can start searching across those tags. I was going to go ahead and implement that, and then I started wondering if we might want to use kind of more of an event store approach to recording those. So rather than just having a list of tags that we add into a table and potentially delete out if they get removed, that we maybe have a history of those tags that have been added and removed and build up the actual state from those events, purely because we may want to go back for reporting purposes and see when we've rescheduled certain events and requests.
Yeah, and we've been talking about that pattern for some time too, about trying to start to move over to that to enable some more interesting reporting scenarios, and definitely those enabling those scenarios without impacting the performance of the system overall. So yeah, that's it's probably not a bad idea.
Okay, well maybe this is it's quite a small story, so maybe that's a good opportunity just to try
it out, get a pattern in there that we can follow and tweak in and get to something that we want to say this is the canon for how we're going to approach this, and then get that out there as the pattern that we use going forward.
Okay, yeah, I'll start sketching that out and give that over for some input once it's further along then.
Excellent. Okay, well, as always, we invite you to Check out our GitHub repo. You can reach us at github.com HTBox AllReady. You'll find the other repositories there on the HTBox as well. We've got our community stand-up happens every 2 weeks, so you'll find us here again 2 weeks from now. And you can see all of our past community stand-ups on our YouTube channel. So if you got here via Twitter or other social media, then please check out our YouTube channel, subscribe so you know when our events are coming up and when we go live and things like that. And feel free to join in. We welcome developers to this project. We are more than happy to help out with pull requests and getting the clone running. We've got articles and documents on how to get all of that stuff in place. So we invite you to do that. We invite you to submit a pull request. Let us know what you're working on, and we'll go through that process of helping you get code committed, and you can help us code for the greater good. Okay, Tony, Steve, thanks very much, guys. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks.
Okay, cheers.